Yo, what's good, everybody? This late night, almost Super Bowl Sunday. I'm Marcus, you're the channel, The Debt Free Dad, where we're talking finances, current events, attorney reactions. So, I had an interesting topic that I wanted to talk about today. And, shout out to my little man because he gave me the idea to talk about this. Because I'm going to be honest, the trial really wasn't even on my radar, but there's been a lot going on with just things in hip hop. We got Jay Prince, who like 1,000 years old, who wanting people to check in and all of this crazy stuff. So, him and Offset got this thing going back and forth, which is making, Jay Prince look goofy because he an old ass guy. In addition to that, we got the trial the of XXX murder trial is going on. This is taking place in Florida. So I wanted to touch bases and just talk a little bit about that trial because I'm gonna keep it a buck. I really haven't seen anybody like cover it. I kind of keep my ear to the ground when there's YouTubers out there who are covering, current events and trials that may be interesting, but I didn't see a lot of people covering this XXX trial. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this trial, let y'all know what's going on, give my legal thoughts and opinions on it. Hey, as an attorney with over 13 years in the game, defense, prosecutions, investigations, the whole nine, I feel like I'm relatively qualified to talk about what's going on in this trial. More importantly, hey, again, like I said, my little man put me onto this. I call him little man like he two. But yeah, my son told me that apparently Drake is set to be a witness by the defense. So I wanted to talk about that point in particular. So we're gonna go ahead and queue up some articles. I got some video, but I'm gonna try to keep it a little light because your boy getting old. Your boy been a little tired. But let me go and pull up the article. Now, there are four individuals who essentially are involved, three who are accused because no conviction yet. One person is pled guilty. You got four individuals. You got Michael Boatwright, Dedrick Williams, Robert Allen, and Trayvon Newsom are the four individuals who were ultimately charged with this murder attempt, this murder robbery event. Now, before we jump into the articles, from all the open source research that I could find related to this case, it kind of goes back to the foundation of what I've seen as a practicing attorney since day one, since the day I passed the bar, went to work, and they just gave me a shitload of files to actually handle without meeting anybody. Day one, anytime street crime happens, like I ain't gonna say 99, I say probably 80% of the time, if you go on a person's social media, you will find evidence that'll link it'll link up so nice, so smoothly because people just, I don't know what it is. People are goofy, especially the younger generation. They just have a tendency when they do something, especially something illegal, they're gonna jump online, they're gonna talk about it, they're gonna post pictures flexing on the gram, they don't turn their location off. All of those things that you think somebody would be like, maybe I shouldn't do this. They're doing all of that stuff. So those are the four individuals who were charged with the death and attempted robbery. Let me go and pull up an article because I wanted to bring up and touch bases on a few points real quick. Give me a second. I gotta pull this up. I'm gonna play this video real quick where they're talking about the trial. I focused on this is day two of the events that happened in the trial. So let's go ahead and cue this up real quick for y'all.
Day of testimony in the murder trial of South Florida rapper XXX Tentacion. CBS 4's Naja Sherman is in the newsroom tonight to take us inside the courtroom. Naja?
Lauren, for a second day, suspect Robert Allen took the stand. It was to testify against the other suspects. Allen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is a witness in the case. Thursday, suspect Robert Allen testified about witness intimidation from one of the co-defendants in the case.
Were there any comments made to you that were not coming from myself or any attorneys?
Yes.
Who made a comment to you about your testimony?
Trayvon.
Jurors also saw images of the suspect showing off money. Allen testified they took these pictures a couple days after killing South Florida rapper XXX Tentacion.
Is that currency?
I hate the way they say his name.
And your co-defendant, Michael Boatwright, holding from the $50,000 that you stole from the victim when you killed him?
Yes.
Detectives arrested Trayvon Newsome, Derek Williams, Robert Allen, and Michael Boatwright for the murder, but only Allen pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is a witness in the case. Detectives say the group ambushed and robbed the rapper on June 18, 2018, outside of Broward County Motorbike Shop. XXX Tentacion was carrying $50,000 in cash in a Louis Vuitton satchel, money he obtained from a Coconut Creek bank. He had intended to use the money to buy a motorbike from the shop. And just moments ago, we learned that popular rapper Drake has been ordered by the court to sit for a deposition in this trial. The defense attorney.
All right, we're gonna touch bases on Drake, the OVO boss a little bit later. But in short, just from open source research, what I can find out is pretty much the thing that hemmed these guys up was video surveillance footage. In addition to video surveillance footage, a lot of tips came in from social media, including looking at those guys' social media. At one point early on, it looks like that actually. At one point early on, it looked like the authorities were actually looking at some other rappers in the South Florida area, but those leads ended up going nowhere. The surveillance footage, along with these yahoos actually going online and bragging about things, essentially what led these guys to get caught. The one gentleman on the stand, he already pled guilty. He ended a plea of guilty to second-degree murder. Now, first of all, there's a few reasons for that, okay? Well, it could be a few reasons for that. The first reason is that, hey, he realized they had a shitload of evidence against him, so he didn't want to eat a murder one charge. A murder one charge is an offense in Florida that under certain circumstances could carry the death penalty, but it definitely carries a life sentence. So I don't know if this brother had one of those aggravating factors that would make first-degree murder sentence an offense that could be punishable by death. Like if you were a prior felon, and some other factors, those are things that can make a murder one charge punishable by death in Florida. But hey, I don't practice in Florida, but I did just kind of look it up to get the landscape. So a couple of reasons why this guy could have took a plea. One, he could have had a previous felony, which could have qualified him to be punished by death if he was charged and convicted of first-degree murder. That's point number one. Point number two, even if he didn't have that felony, first-degree murder conviction, he looking at life in prison. He probably didn't want to eat that, so he took a plea for the second-degree murder. Now, I don't know if y'all recall in that video. Let me get rid of this. But in the video that I just had up on the screen, the attorney was asking him if anyone had spoken to him. That's just the name of the game. Everybody say they ain't snitching. Everybody talk all of this. I know three instances, and I can't think of. It's probably thousands of cases that went through my hand as a defense attorney, as a prosecutor, doing criminal investigation. It's thousands of cases, probably. I don't know if it's hundreds of thousands, but there's a shitload of cases that went through my hand. I only can think of three instances where people stuck to the I'm not snitching, I'm not saying anything. Most times, once that heat get on, everybody pull a 6'9", everybody pull a gunner. That's just kind of generally what it is. But the first thing that their defense attorney is going to do, and this is just related to the individual who already pled guilty, who we just saw the video of, and he's testifying about the robbery, about the murder, about what happened. The first thing that the defense attorney is going to do, and this is just a common tactic that defense attorneys do is they want to show the jury that this guy's testimony was solely in exchange for him getting a lighter sentence. That's the reason why you'll see defense attorneys ask questions. What was promised to you in exchange for your testimony today? And then the person will say, well, in exchange, or did you take a plea of a lesser charge in exchange for your cooperation with the prosecutors or the state? And he's going to say yes, but that's done so that the jury, they want the defense attorney in that situation, they want the jury to kind of look at the testimony of the person who already pled guilty as something that could be BS because they got something in exchange for it. I tell you, very rarely would that in and of itself stand alone actually work to benefit someone. The interesting thing about this case is, and let's turn it and talk a little bit about Drake, right? Because when you're doing these jury trials, whether it's a state, federal, whatever it is, you always have to go through a jury selection process. This is how important the jury selection process is. And this plays right into why I think it's genius that the defense attorney wants to call Drake as a witness. This is actually genius on his part. Now, I don't know how effective it'll be. I don't think it'll be effective. I could think of a billion ways, not a billion, but I could think of a lot of ways to keep that testimony out. But this is what Drake being called as a witness, this is how important it is, okay? One, he's being called as a witness. So the fact that he's being called as a witness, none of the prosecutors for the state, nobody believes that Drake actually has something to do with this, right? This has nothing to do with Drake being guilty or accused or nothing. If Drake was accused, his ass would be on the stand. He wouldn't be a witness. So why would the defense attorney want to call Drake as a witness? Well, let's backtrack. Let's talk about the jury selection first. Jury selection. Hey, what's going on, Crystal? I appreciate you tuning in. Jury selection is important. If I was selecting a jury as a defense attorney on this case, I would want jurors who were probably in the age range of 35 to 45, preferably African American, who have some knowledge, understanding of the hip hop culture. I would specifically tailor my questions because I would want, if I'm the defense attorney, I want jurors who age 35 to 45, African American, have some understanding of hip hop. I don't care if it's, they just listen to it, they're familiar with it, but it's specific reasons why I want those three things in a juror. And I'm sure the defense attorney wanted those three things in a juror. Okay, why do I want somebody who's African American? Because it's probably a high likelihood that they're going to be familiar with the hip hop culture. They're going to be familiar with rap lyrics that may implicate somebody else or may implicate a person. Why do I want somebody who's aged 35 to 45? Well, I want somebody aged 35 to 45 because if you're aged 35 to 45, there is one thing that you unequivocally understand about hip hop. That's hip hop beef. And I know it sounds funny, but I'm dead ass serious. If you're aged 35 to 45, you grew up in an era where hip hop beef between rappers were real. Hip hop beef where rapper A said something about rapper B, and when they met on the street, it was a problem. People got shot over it. A whole coast beef started over it. That is important as hell in this trial for the defense. Think about it. I'm in that age range, okay, 35 to 45. I remember, I know the origins of hip hop beef, but more specifically, I can think of so many rappers who we're not just gonna go. I mean, we got Tupac, we got Biggie, but there's a lot of rappers out there. Young Dolph recently, he had some type of beef with other rappers. So I mean, you want somebody, you want a juror who's black, who's 35 to 45, who knows about hip hop because they understand the context of hip hop beef. They understand rap lyrics. They're probably hip to what's going on out there. And they come from a generation where they saw rappers beef on track and that shit turn into something real in the streets. So that's the beginning part of why Drake is going to be called as a witness. The jury selection, that's the jurors that the defense wants. I didn't even look at the breakup because you can't really find information about the jurors because they want to keep the jurors kind of protected and enclosed. But if I'm the defense attorney, those are the jurors I want. Now, why the hell would I call Drake to the stand? This is why I would call Drake to the stand, okay? First of all, there's an article out there. Well, not an article, but let me go ahead and pull it up. I'm going to pull it up and find it for you right now. Oh man, I may not have that. I may not have that article right now, and I'm not about to go searching for it. But essentially, on social media, prior to XXX being murdered, he actually put a post up that said, "If something happened to me, if I'm murdered, hey, it was Drake." Then subsequently, he ended up deleting that IG post or Twitter or whatever platform he posted it on. Once he deleted that post, he came out and said that, well, you know what? You know what? I was hacked. But that's interesting that that post came out. So I'm going to play a little bit of a clip. I'm going to pause it some of the way through, but it's going to show some of the opening arguments that's going to be made. But remember that point. While we're watching this video, as I'm talking through it, remember black jurors. If I'm a defense attorney, I want African American jurors. I want jurors aged 35 to 45. I want jurors who have knowledge of hip hop. The reason I want jurors aged 35 to 45 because they're familiar with hip hop beef, the long line of pattern or the long history of people beefing over track and it turning into some real shit on the street. That's going to play an important role of why they want to bring Drake in to testify. Now, before I even play the video, let me just cover it. So that's point number one. You got the jury there who has that understanding of hip hop beefs. Now, the evidence against these three individuals who are on trial is, in my opinion, I think is patently obvious. They have the surveillance footage. They have the testimony of someone who was an accessory during the fact who participated in it. They have social media content, location pings from when these guys are posting money up and all of these crazy ass things that they did, which were extremely stupid immediately after the murder. What's going on, Dimitri? I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. But the interesting thing here is, even though that case is locked tight, as a defense attorney, this is how you want to kind of protect your clients. The first thing you want to say is, hey, do I have an actual legal defense to help these guys? In this situation, it's no defense. They can't say self-defense or anything like that. So we're gonna toss that out of the window. So when you don't have an actual defense of something to stop the charge, you want to make the situation, I call it the muddy the waters option. I want to make it as cloudy and foggy as hell for the jurors, so the jurors is going to question everything that they see. So if you got a black juror who's familiar with hip hop, who's 35 to 40 years old, 45 years old, who has some familiarity with the hip hop beef, people dying from hip hop beefs, now you bring in Drake, and Drake is Drake probably been on top for a decade or more. He been on top for a decade or more. But stupidly, what did he do? He made a bunch of songs talking about this rapper's passing. And I'm not going to play the lyrics because, if I play the lyrics, it's going to be a problem. But Drake has made a lot of songs, not a lot, but he spit more than a few bars about XXX being murdered and how he would have still been here had he not made the Instagram post. He made a comment in a rap about the $50,000 we saw in the video that XXX was taken out from the bank, where he's alleged or asserted that he was taking that money out to kind of put a hit on Drake. Now, these are just lyrics. We can't question the truth of these lyrics. But the fact that Drake has lyrics out there where he's talking about this guy being murdered, what could have stopped it had he not been talking all reckless and everything, that's fucking beautiful for me as a defense attorney. Because the defense attorney wants to call Drake to the stand. Well, they're going to do a deposition, which is a whole weird Florida thing because you typically don't see depositions in criminal cases. But essentially, the reason the defense attorney wants to bring Drake in is solely for that influence on the jury, right? We got these three guys. If I'm the defense attorney, I'm representing one of these yahoos over here who was charged with this murder and robbery, right? They got evidence that clearly kind of points at my guy. But out of these 12 jurors sitting over here who are hopefully I got a few African Americans over there. Hopefully I got some people aged 35 to 45 who understand and know the history of hip hop beef and people actually dying out here because of it. Hopefully I got people who familiar with hip hop culture and familiar with the lyrics that Drake have been rapping about. And they probably Googling that shit, even though they're not supposed to as jurors. But hopefully I got some jurors who familiar with the lyrics that Drake have been rapping about where he's talking about this guy. So if I could get Drake to testify, right, and ask Drake questions, and I'm gonna be honest, there are some ways I think the prosecution can limit what the hell Drake has to say. But the defense main purpose is I want to get Drake in so I can ask him about his lyrics, ask him about if there was any potential beef, ask him if he knows potentially the person who was identified as the shooter. Because if I can ask Drake those questions, even though those questions may not have any real probative value, may not have any real value to that murder trial at hand, asking Drake those questions to a person who's familiar with Drake's lyrics, who's familiar with hip hop beef, who's familiar with the entire situation, that defense attorney actually has a good chance of getting maybe one of those jurors to think, man, maybe Drake wasn't just rapping lyrics to be rapping them. Maybe he actually did have something to do with it. So that's the entire reason that the defense wants to call Drake to the stand. If Drake was a real suspect, his ass would be on the other side of the bench, handcuffed, being accused of it. Him being called to the stand is solely a tactic by the defense. The defense is hoping that he has a juror who's familiar with Drake's lyrics, who's familiar with hip hop beef, who's familiar with the historical context of people rapping and beefing with each other and shit happening in the street. If I can ask Drake a few questions to potentially get that one juror to lean a little bit too much into what he sees on social media or what he hears about in the lyrics and think that, man, was this something Drake had to do with it? It could potentially result in a hung jury, which would be a short-term victory for the defendants in this case. Now, that's the whole reason why Drake is being called to the stand. It's for no other reason but that. Now, can the prosecution in this case do anything to limit Drake's testimony? Hell yeah, of course. Because I'm gonna be honest, I don't think there's too many things that you can ask Drake about just from the information I know about this case that would actually have any real value against the defendants and the facts that are at issue. So Drake was actually requested to testify in late January, but he didn't show. And so now he's being requested to do a deposition. Now it's going to be interesting to see if he shows for this deposition and that. Essentially, how it works in depositions is a weird thing because in Florida, you can do a deposition in a criminal case, which is definitely not the norm of how things go. But essentially, a deposition is, hey, they're going to do it over Zoom. It looks like from what I read, they're going to have you're under oath. You sit down. They're going to ask you questions. You have to answer the questions. It's all recorded. It's all for video footage. And all of that information may or may not come in during trial. So if I'm in a deposition and they're recording me and they ask me a question, my attorney could say, I object to that question, Your Honor. I don't think that question should be asked for whatever grounds. I still have to answer it. Then later on, the judge will figure out if that's something that should be introduced to the jury or not. But it's going to be interesting to see if he actually participates in the deposition. I'm going to say no. I'd be shocked if he doesn't participate. I mean, I'd be shocked if he participated in the deposition. This essentially what will happen if he does. If he participates in the deposition, he's going to record. They're going to ask the questions over Zoom. They're going to record it. Those questions may or may not, depending on what the judge deems appropriate, come in if they have some real value to the actual trial. That's why I don't think that a lot of the stuff that the defense is trying to do to potentially persuade a juror that it wasn't these three guys, it was six God, it was six God who was the mastermind behind it. That's why I don't think it's going to be successful, because I don't think a lot of the things he say during his deposition will actually make it to the jury to actually be heard. But if he doesn't participate in the deposition, the judge could essentially hold him in contempt for violating the order. Because this case is in Florida, yes, they can issue an arrest warrant. They could fine him. The arrest warrant would only be valid in Florida. Now, can they use that warrant to arrest him somewhere else? Yeah, of course they could, but I think the chances of that would be slim. Okay, for example, he doesn't participate in the deposition. The judge issues arrest warrant because he violated the court order to participate in the deposition. In Florida, if he come to Florida, he gonna get pulled, jammed up on that arrest warrant. He lives in California. If he's in California, that Florida arrest warrant is invalid. Essentially, to make it valid or to have any validity in California, they would actually have to go from Florida to California, talk to a California judge. A judge in California will have to read the facts and say, okay, we're going to also issue an arrest warrant in his residential state based on this. Then even if they did arrest him, then there's a whole matter of extradition. It's when someone's arrested in state A for a charge in state B, it's not an easy process to get that person from place A to place B. I mean, sometimes in some instances, it involves communication between the upper level executives with the executive branch. And that's, I just don't think that that'll happen. So it's going to be interesting. I'd be shocked if he participated in this deposition. If he participated in this deposition, I would really be shocked, but we're going to see. He didn't come to court when they wanted him to come to court. I think it was January 22nd. So I really don't think that he's going to participate in this deposition. Now, I wanted to pull up a video real quick of just some things from the opening argument. I think it's about 9 minutes, but we'll pause it and skip some parts. But I want y'all to just kind of hear some of the things that they're talking about in the open argument. And then before we jump out of here, I'm actually going to read some information from the testimony of XXX friend who was with him in the vehicle at the time that XXX was murdered. I thought that was interesting.
Williams, Michael Boatwright, and Trayvon
Let me know if y'all could.
are guilty of first-degree murder and guilty of armed robbery in this case.
The trial of three men for the murder of rapper XXX and Tashion is underway.
They keep butchering his name.
Top moments from this. I'm Antoinette Levy, and welcome to Law and Crime Sidebar Podcast. Trayvon Newsome, Dedrick Williams, and Michael Boatwright are all on trial for the murder. A fourth man, Robert Allen, pleaded guilty and is testifying for the prosecution in this case. XXX and Tashion, whose legal name is Jose Onfrey, had $50,000 in cash on him as he shopped for motorcycles in South Florida on June 18, 2018. A group of men ran to his vehicle, shot him, and stole his money. Now, nearly 5 years later, this trial has begun. Prosecutor Pasquale gave a strong opening statement telling the jury they will see surveillance video that clearly shows Michael Boatwright shooting and killing XXX and Tashion.
Jose is there, unarmed, in the driver's seat, surprised that it's been in this case. You'll hear how they start struggling with him, punching him, and that both of the gunmen at one point are trying to get his property from him. They're able to wrestle away from him the satchel that had the $50,000 in cash. And without any provocation, without any type of weapons or anything being used by the victim, you'll hear how Michael Boatwright fired several times, killing the victim at close range. You'll also be able to see the surveillance that shows this.
With 3 men on trial, they have 3 separate defense attorneys, so each attorney gave his own opening statement. Michael Boatwright's attorney went first, and he claimed that Robert Allen, he's the man who pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and is testifying for the state, will lie to the jury. He gets up on the stand.
Robert Allen is the only person that you will hear from that puts Michael Boatwright at Riva Motorsports on June 18th, 2018. And he has a whole host to lie. In law school, they teach us don't promise something in opening statement that you can't deliver on during the trial. Let me be very clear. If Robert Allen testifies in this case, he will lie. And he will prove that he is lying. Police ignored an extraordinary amount of evidence that Michael was not the killer, was not involved in this case.
Williams' attorney, Mauricio Padilla, was up next, and he claims that law enforcement dropped the ball and did not investigate this case properly. He touches on the fact that Broward County Police had their backs up against the wall because of the Parkland school shooting that happened just 4 months prior to the homicide. He then said the Parkland school shooting was handed XXX's case. He points out that detective and other investigators cut corners because they wanted to wrap this case up as quickly as possible. Finally, Padilla goes on to say how law enforcement didn't look into the Grammy Award-winning rapper Drake.
Before he said, if anybody kills me, it's Drake. And do you think that for one moment, here today, days after the event, he's killed by 2 masked men, right? He came on social media and said, guys, before he dies, if anybody kills me, it's Drake. Do you think in that time span that they went and they addressed him, they talked to him? Do you think sitting here today, years later, any detective has ever asked, Drake or anybody like that? No, they never did that. So you ask yourself, how could that be? If any of us is involved in, God forbid, in a murder, and you say, hey, it's so, you better believe that. But in this case, they didn't do it. They didn't do it because they didn't comport with their version and their narrative. And as law enforcement, I think that they have the obligation to do so.
All right, real quick. That was exactly what I talked about with Drake. I don't know if that was there's a couple things before I finish playing this video. I don't know if the defense attorneys for the 3 individuals who are in trial actually tried this, because they said that they're having one trial for all 3 individuals. And trust me, I've been in that position as a defense attorney. That shit sucks. So normally what I would do, or most attorneys would do in that situation, they would actually have a hearing in front of the judge to try to have separate trials. I wouldn't want my client to be in the trial with these 2 yahoos as well. So I'm assuming, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that the defense attorneys actually tried to separate these cases out for 3 different trials. It's up to the judge. Most times, I'm going to tell you, most judges, they not trying to do that shit. Most judges like, no, excuse me, I'm not about to sit here and we have to hear the same thing 3 times over and inconvenience everybody. It wouldn't be an inconvenience here because their only witness is somebody who's already in custody, so he's not going anywhere. But normally a defense attorney will want to separate his client out from the other co-defendants and have that trial isolated, but it's up to the judge. The judge probably declined it. Now, when he talking all this stuff about Drake, one, I don't think he should have brought up in my opening statement. I wouldn't have brought up the fact that XXX said on his social media, if something happened to me, it was Drake. Because the thing that he didn't bring up was that XXX later on said that, oh, my account was hacked and I didn't put that out. I think the better approach for him would have been someone who Drake had an established rap beef with this guy, and their lyrics where he's expressly talking about, committing the murder or participating in the murder, that probably would have been the better route to go. I think it was it's not anything damaging because it's just the opening statement. It's not actual evidence. But I would have left out that whole social media post because even XXX came out and said that, hey, my account was hacked. Was his account hacked? Probably not. But, if he said that, that's going to get introduced. And if that was the case, if that's going to get introduced anyway, you should have just left that shit out. I would have, personally.
Finally, Trayvon Newsom's attorney gave his opening statement. He went last. And instead of pointing to evidence that will clear his client, he pointed to evidence and said what it will not show.
My opening statement and all opening statements are supposed to be about what the evidence will show. But in this case, I'm going to tell you what the evidence will not show. The evidence will not show that any firearm was ever recovered that could be matched or linked to Trayvon Newsom. The evidence will not show anything from a thorough search of his home where he lived with his father and his sister, including digging up his entire backyard because they heard the money was buried there, turned up anything that would link Trayvon Newsom to this terrible crime. The evidence will not show the Trayvon's statement of admission or any statement that would link him to this terrible crime to any third party or anyone else for that matter. The evidence will show no DNA whatsoever found on the body of Mr. Onfroy or on that car. Although you see going on, you see they allege he goes around the car and gets actually into it. No DNA whatsoever linked to Trayvon Newsom. No fingerprints linked to Trayvon Newsom. No cell phone evidence places Trayvon Newsom anywhere near that scene.
At the time of the murder, XXX was shopping for those motorcycles with his uncle, his step-uncle, actually, Leonard Kerr. Kerr took the stand and explained he was able to run away from the car when the shooters drew their guns on him and XXX. He's on surveillance video running away from him. Kerr explained what he saw and heard minutes later.
Now, at the point that you're calling Cleo, had anything else happened other than you exited the car for your life?
He talking low.
So you left Jose in the car and the two gunmen were still there? Did you see anything that happened to Jose and the gunmen after that?
This dude sound like Silk the Shocker. I can't hear anything he's saying.
You saw that?
He just blew me because I couldn't really hear what he was saying. So I know y'all couldn't hear what he was saying. But long story short, with the uncle, he said that he had an opportunity to flee out of the car. So he popped the door open, hauled out. Once he hauled ass and got out, he said when he bent the corner, he heard the gunshots go off. Then he heard the car peel out. By the time he got back, that was when he saw his nephew, XXX, who was shot and murdered. But that's kind of just what's going on in this trial right now. So there's a couple of things to look for. First thing is, I guess from an evidentiary standpoint, I think it's going to be problematic. I'm anticipating a guilty verdict for all three of these individuals. And I think the reason being is I think just the testimony of the fourth person who admits to being there is really important. The gunman definitely screwed because he can be identified from the video. The other gentleman who the video really couldn't identify is one party who the video couldn't identify. You heard his attorney say they didn't have any cell phone records that place him at the scene. I think it is probably going to be sufficient to have that testimony of the person who already pled guilty. So I would just be honest. I anticipate that all three of these persons are probably going to be found guilty of the first degree murder and the armed robbery that they are charged with. In the law, they have a concept of your accessory before the fact, during the fact, or after the fact. If you're accessory during the fact, you're charged the same as the principal. Accessory during the fact, normally you just think of it as the driver for the bank robbery or something to that effect. You were accessory to the crime during the fact, you get charged the same as the individual who was charged with the shooting or the actual bank robbery. Is that same concept here. We have to see how things are going to play out with Drake. He didn't show the court when he was called as a witness or requested as a witness on January 22nd. So now the court in Florida, they allow you to do a deposition, a video hearing over Zoom where they're going to ask him questions. He can participate or not. If he doesn't participate, I told y'all it could be some legal consequences where he could have an arrest warrant in Florida. He could potentially have an arrest warrant in another state, but that's a lot more problematic and a lot longer process to actually go through than actually to get him extradited and shipped back to Florida if he was arrested. I just don't think he's going to participate in anything. I think he's going to leave that shit alone. I don't know. If I was advising him, it's funny because depending on what my role would be, my advice would be different. If I was advising him legally, I would say, oh man, you need to just go ahead and participate in the deposition. It is what it is. Because I wouldn't be too concerned that whatever he says in that video deposition, I don't think any of that is going to make it to the jury anyway. Because I just think it's his defense attorney just trying to muddy the waters to get one juror who believes in hip hop gossip to think, man, I think 6 God has something to do with it. I just think that's a long ass shot. I think that's a long shot that's probably not going to work in the long run. So if I was actually advising him from a legal standpoint, I would say go ahead and do it. Now, if I was advising him from a brand standpoint, I'd be like, man, leave that shit alone, man. You don't need to be in court. You don't need to be on the news. Nothing getting leaked. We don't need none of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I don't think he's going to show up. At the end of the day, what we're seeing right now with this Drake case, with the Takeoff murder, and you got Jay Prince on the radio sounding goofy, old as hell. He old as hell. And I like Jay Prince. I gave Jay Prince, I did a video, top 10 hip hop entrepreneurs. Jay Prince was like in the top 7 or 6 or something like that. He actually did a lot from a business standpoint for the South as it relates to music. But this dude running around talking about mob ties at 50 something, man, Jay Prince got to be older than 50 something, man. Jay Prince, that dude got to be old as hell. Now I got to find out. Let me see. Yeah, this dude 57 years old. He 57 years old, a multi-millionaire from the music industry, and what he did for help putting the South on the map is music. And this dude still gets validation or seeks validation from street shit. It's the most ignorant, crazy thing that I ever seen. I understand it. I get it. People come from there. We grow up in the hood. We grow up in fucked up environments. But like at some point you think like, damn, you got to age out of that shit. I literally saw a video where Jay Prince was talking about a time where Jay-Z went to Houston and didn't check in. Jay-Z a billionaire. He don't got to check in with you, man, if you don't get out of here. So, I get it. When people financial situation changes, you still want to be cool and kick it with the people around the way. And I'm not saying you can't do that, but you got to identify your risk. I did a video with a partner of mine, and he actually has an ETF on the New York Stock Exchange. It's pretty interesting. And I'll probably link that video in this description. But, that was one of the questions. Like, when you get money, can you go back to the hood and still kick it? And you just got to understand and identify your level of risk, man. If you out there, like if you out there, you got to realize and keep your head on the swivel, because the streets is the streets, and the streets don't care who you are, what your success level is. So you got to keep your head on the swivel. You got to, once you become successful, even if you're not successful, if you're striving for success, you can't let the validation of street shit be something that's important to you, because that shit not gonna get you nowhere where you want to go. You know what I mean? The validation of the street stuff was something that was good while you're in the street, but now you're out here trying to make business move, power moves. You're gonna have to move a little bit different. Y'all think you see Jay-Z like out on the corner hanging with his boys doing reckless shit to put himself in a situation where he's exposed to so much risk? Hell nah. Jigga's just not doing that. Diddy not doing that. Dr. Dre not doing that. Hell, 50 Cent not doing that. And 50 Cent, I think he still got a little goon in him. I rock with 50, but you know, hey, you got to move different if you want different. You can't let street validation make you feel whole as a man. If you're a 50-something-year-old man and being validated by the streets make you feel big, that's a fucking you problem like hell. That's it. I just wanted to chop up this video real quick, talk a little bit about what was going on in this trial. If you enjoyed this video, check out the video on the screen. It'll definitely be more content you enjoy. I appreciate everybody who tuned in, and I appreciate all the subscribers to the channels, the likes, the comments, the dislikes. I appreciate all that.